Under the heavy pressure of Western sanctions, China and Russia increasingly claim to have a limitless partnership. However, a closer look reveals that both sides are merely taking what they need, with China arguably reaping more benefits. This time, the Russians have realized that the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, talks a big game but seizes opportunities for its own gain. A prime example of this dynamic is the automotive market. In 2023, Chinese automobiles rapidly captured up to 60% of the Russian market, with 730,000 vehicles exported to Russia. This number is expected to grow even further this year. By early 2024, as many as 57 Chinese auto brands were active in Russia, enjoying booming sales. However, the honeymoon period did not last long. It did not take long for the Russians to sense something amiss. The deputy general manager of Russia's largest truck manufacturer, KAMAZ, was the first to express concerns, clearly criticizing Russia's automotive strategy for being overly dependent on China. He noted that Chinese companies showed no intent of transferring core technologies. As a result, the facade of China-Russia friendly cooperation was torn down. He made it clear China is here to make money, not to teach us real skills. Moscow Mayor Sobyanin echoed this sentiment, stating that not only did Chinese car companies refuse to provide technological support, but they also doubled prices as the situation favored them. Voygin, a scholar at Russia's Higher School of Economics, HSE, reinforced this, saying that China is solely interested in selling products in Russia and shows little interest in genuine investment. The combined outcry made Russian businesses realize they were being treated as mere profit centers. A poll conducted by the Moscow Times further revealed that over 65% of Russian businesses preferred the return of Western companies over continuing reliance on Chinese partners. In other words, Russian enterprises were reluctant to forge deep technological ties with the CCP. Why is this the case? Ultimately, the CCP's business philosophy differs significantly from that of the West. Western companies focus on long-term mutual benefits, are open to technological transfer, and promote joint ventures, aiming for sustainable development. In contrast, the CCP prioritizes immediate profit, extracting value, and leaving without concern for the long-term health of Russia's automotive industry. Genuine investments in factories are seen as risky, as sudden geopolitical shifts could jeopardize their investments. For the CCP, such ventures are simply not worth it. Even if China were to transfer technology, the quality of that technology might be questionable. China's competitive edge largely relies on low labor costs and price wars. In Russia, labor cannot be exploited in the same way it is in China, making it difficult to apply the cost-cutting strategies. In essence, the CCP is not interested in developing Russia's industry, but rather in profiting from market gaps. There are expectations, of course. Haval, a brand under Great Wall Motors, invested $500 million in 2019 to build a plant in Russia's Tula region, with an annual capacity of 150,000 vehicles. In early 2024, an engine factory was also launched. At first glance, this seems like a comprehensive industrial layout. However, this does not imply technology transfer. The plant is wholly owned by Great Wall Motors, with no shares allocated to any Russian enterprises. The Special Investment Contact SPIC, signed with Russia's Ministry of Industry and Trade, was merely for local production, while core technologies remain firmly in Chinese hands. Other companies like Chery, JAC, and Chang'an focus on partial local assembly, with no substantial technology transfer. Automobiles are a pillar of Russia's national economy, and long-term reliance on imports is unsustainable. Russian authorities understand the need to leverage market access to obtain Chinese technology. At the very least, they aim to push Chinese automakers to invest more and bring in technical talent. To this end, starting October 1st, 2024, Russia will significantly increase the scraping tax on imported vehicles and machinery by 70 to 85%, with an annual increase of 10 to 20% thereafter. This policy aims to compel Chinese automakers to invest in Russia under the guise of market for technology, but in reality, it erects barriers to force compliance. Nevertheless, the Chinese government has little interest in exporting core electric vehicle technologies to Russia. From their perspective, Russia's market is limited and not highly profitable, while Russian consumers can be demanding and unpredictable. Furthermore, the CCP recognizes that building factories in Russia would create jobs and tax revenue, contradicting China's goals of domestic job creation and economic stability. The CCP prefers to keep the benefits at home while treating Russia as a major client. This is evident in the Ministry of Commerce's decision to include electric vehicle technology on the export control list by the end of 2023, tightly guarding this asset. China affairs expert Alexei Jigadev highlighted another case illustrating the issue. When Chinese firms built Moscow's metro, they brought their own equipment, technology, and personnel, leaving no lasting technological footprint in Russia. The reasoning is simple. If Russia acquires the technology, China loses future business opportunities. This practice is a blatant example of profiteering. This scenario extends beyond Russia to Belarus. When cooperating on surveillance systems, the CCP required the use of Huawei servers and software, with Chinese technicians overseeing the process. The message was clear. The technology remains with China, and Belarus is merely a paying customer. When KAMAZ developed the Compass medium-duty truck series, many parts were sourced from China's Jace Motors, but obtaining critical technology was impossible. Worse, KAMAZ paid higher prices for these parts, further fueling Russian discontent. Sobyanin summarized the issue, saying that doing business with China is more challenging than doing dealings with Western companies. The crux of the matter lies in the CCP's reluctance to share technology it originally acquired from the West. When Russia attempts to reverse learn from China, the CCP firmly refuses. KAMAZ even advised the Russian government to reconsider its strategy, anticipating a potential political shift in Europe that could reopen access to Western technology. In fact, Russia's Ministry of Finance and Central Bank have drafted a presidential decree to encourage new foreign investors, signaling a desire to reconnect with the West. Rumors suggest that if Trump returns to office, a ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine conflict could lead to the return of Western and Japanese South Korean automakers. Brands like Nissan and Renault, which sold their Russian factories at low prices, retain payback clauses, allowing them to reclaim assets once geopolitical tensions ease. If that happens, the dominance of Chinese automakers in Russia may be short-lived, given their profit-driven strategies. Russian consumers are likely to place greater trust in Western brands. Jigadev also pointed out that Russia's economic scale is equivalent to that of China's Guangdong province, giving China overwhelming leverage in negotiations. Simply put, Russia has little bargaining power. It must buy even if prices rise. Chinese companies relish this advantage, firmly adhering to the logic that teaching competitors means starving oneself. Technology transfer is unlikely to happen. A similar story unfolds in the energy sector. China once promised to purchase 50 billion cubic meters of Russian natural gas annually, but the power of Siberia 1 pipeline's capacity is limited to 22 billion cubic meters. The power of Siberia 2 pipeline remains in negotiation limbo, reflecting China's lukewarm interest. In May, Putin visited China without Gazprom CEO Miller, signaling stalling talks. China also pressures Russia on pricing, paying only 44% of what Europe once did, resulting in a 7 billion loss for Gazprom last year. Despite this, Putin continues selling to China out of necessity, exemplifying opportunistic trade tactics. Following the Russia-Ukraine war, the CCP initially extended economic support, boosting Putin's confidence. However, as the conflict escalated, China refrained from providing direct military aid or critical equipment, instead extracting economic benefits, highlighting the hollow nature of their supposed partnership. Russia's economy has nearly severed ties with the United States. At the BRICS summit in October, Vladimir Putin attempted to launch a new reserve currency to challenge the dominance of the US dollar. However, India showed little enthusiasm, and China's stance remained ambiguous. By December 6th, an NBC News interview with Donald Trump sent shockwaves throughout Moscow. It was revealed that Xi Jinping had already privately spoken with Trump, and the two reportedly had a warm exchange. Trump even hinted on social media that if he returned to office, any BRICS nation attempting to weaken the dollar would face 100% tariffs. Given Trump's reputation for following through on his threats, the prospect of such measures heightened pressure on Russia. Under the current economic climate, China remains the only major source of liquidity for Russia. Without Beijing's support, Russia's economy faces potential collapse. The critical question is whether China is willing to fully align with Russia at the central bank level. Putin once believed Xi could be a reliable backer, but Xi's private engagement with Trump has left the Russian leader deeply unsettled. On December 12th, Putin dispatched Dmitry Medvedev to Beijing, carrying a personal letter. The move was not only a symbolic gesture underscoring Russia's commitment to bilateral relations, but also a strategic decision to secure sensitive agreements away from potential leaks or surveillance. The hand-delivered letter was intended to convey a clear message. We need to join forces to counter the US, and I am not bluffing, I still have nuclear weapons. However, Washington is prepared to respond if deeper financial cooperation between China and Russia materializes. With the US already imposing strict semiconductor restrictions on China, further sanctions targeting China's financial sector could severely impact its economy. For Xi, avoiding open confrontation with the US remains a priority, at least until Trump's return to office clarifies the geopolitical landscape. Meanwhile, Russia's precarious situation, dragged down by prolonged conflict in Ukraine and extensive Western sanctions, places Putin in urgent need of Chinese support. Yet China's strategic hesitance could push Putin to make greater concessions. The high-stakes game, however, carries risks. If Putin feels cornered, the threat of nuclear escalation or a shift in alliances could destabilize China's broader geopolitical strategy. The underlying issue is that neither Putin nor Xi genuinely trust the other. Their alliance is driven by strategic necessity rather than mutual affection. China remains economically and technologically reliant on the US, preventing it from fully breaking ties with Washington. Russia, on the other hand, faces mounting isolation, its energy-based economy battered by sanctions. The partnership between Moscow and Beijing is thus one of convenience, not deep-rooted trust. Russia's key concern is whether China will establish a direct currency exchange mechanism, aligning the yuan more closely with the ruble. Such a move would undoubtedly provoke the US, which would interpret it as an attempt to undermine the dollar's dominance. For China's export-driven economy, comprehensive US financial sanctions could prove devastating. Consequently, Beijing is unlikely to jeopardize its relationship with Washington solely for the sake of Russia. This leaves both sides in a stalemate. Moscow wants China to fully commit, while Beijing continues to hedge its bets. Global observers are closely watching whether Xi will meet Putin's financial demands or prioritize diplomatic maneuvering with Trump to avoid further tariffs and sanctions. The choices made by Beijing and Moscow in the coming months could significantly shape the trajectory of international relations. Russia's current predicament stems from its deteriorating relationship with the West. Once envisioning a powerful Euro-Asian empire driven by energy cooperation with the EU, Moscow found its ambitions thwarted by NATO's expansion and Ukraine's drift towards the West. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 further alienated Russia from Europe, pushing it closer to China. Yet China's approach to Russia remains transactional, prioritizing economic gain over genuine alliance building. Looking ahead, Trump's potential return to the White House may lead to negotiations aimed at ending the Russia-Ukraine war. The US, having already weakened Russia and constrained Europe, may view further involvement as unnecessary. A ceasefire deal, coupled with Trump's ambitions for a Nobel Peace Prize, could reshape the geopolitical landscape. Throughout this period, China will likely continue its balancing act, publicly affirming ties with Russia while quietly signaling willingness to engage with the US. For the CCP, maintaining power and maximizing economic gains take precedent over ideology or loyalty. In an authoritarian regime, power and profit remain the ultimate goals. Should peace talks materialize, Russia's re-emergence in Central Asia could threaten China's Belt and Road Initiative, while renowned cooperation between Moscow and Europe could sideline Beijing. Despite its recent pivot to China, Russia still views Europe as a more desirable partner due to its technological and economic advantages. If Russia eventually reconciles with the West, China risks losing a strategic partner, prompting Beijing to accuse Moscow of betraying their alliance. History repeatedly demonstrates that authoritarian friendships unravel when interests diverge. Ultimately, sustainable development arises from open cooperation, not opportunistic alliances. As the veil of propaganda fades, countries subjected to exploitative partnerships may turn against the CCP, driven by the universal desire for freedom and dignity.